Tamil Nadu Global Investors Meet 2024 is happening in Chennai on January 7 and 8.
Hello and a warm welcome to Federal special program Capital Beat. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge today launched the logo for the Bharat Jodo Nyay Yatra. That is the second leg of the Bharat Jodo Yatra, which starts from 14th of January. But this time it has a new tagline. The tagline says, Nyay ka hak milne tak. And Rahul Gandhi has also tweeted about the right to justice. And that is what the party and its allies will fight for. Now, this yatra will cross through 15 states, 110 districts, 100 Lok Sabha seats, 337 assembly seats, covering a distance of 6,700 kilometers. While Mallikarjun Kharge was laying emphasis on the political agenda of the upcoming Bharat Jodo Nyay Yatra, he also said that the yatra will, of course, raise the social, political, and the economic issues. This yatra will also become a platform for not only Congress but its allies to convey to the people the party's message and also to listen to their concerns. So the big question is, how transformative will this yatra be in terms of the social and the electoral impact? Joining me now is Mridula Mukherjee, the noted historian of the country. She was part of the first leg of the Bharat Jodo Yatra. She visited the yatra. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining. We have Sanjay Jha, former spokesperson of the Congress. Thank you so much, Sanjay. And we have Sharad Gupta, senior journalist and editor. Thank you so much for joining. And let me begin with Mridula ji. How would you really assess the second leg of the Bharat Jodo Yatra? The tagline says that Nyay ka hak milne tak. And Rahul Gandhi also has tweeted that, we will fight for the right to justice. So how does it unfold in the coming days? And will it be quite transformative as what everyone is expecting? Yes.
Well, I'm a historian, you forget. I talk about the past, not about the future. But anyway, having said that, one can't actually assess what's going to happen, but one can talk about based on the experience of the first yatra. I think there are some things which clearly one can expect, which will also have an impact on the electoral scene, the wider. I would like to make this distinction. I think the yatra is a political act because an electoral agenda is only one part of the broader frame of politics, though we often reduce politics to elections. Now, how these two interact, how the broader politics or the non-electoral politics impacts electoral politics, it's never directly, but it's always there. One can take many examples from history. It's like asking a question, did the Dandi March have an effect on the 1936-37 elections? But of course it did. The Congress would not have come to power in almost the majority of the states in India for the first time if it hadn't been for the power of the civil disobedience movement a few years earlier and much else. So I think I see the clear connection between these two things. Because one, of course, as we saw in the first yatra, the Bharat Jodo Yatra, it did energize people within the party also. It gave, especially the younger people, I think, for the first time in many years, something idealistic, which made them feel that they were part of something important and something good. Now, I think that's very important to be able to arouse that kind of sentiment in people. And then even the more traditional cadre, the older local level leaderships, they all did get involved for the first time, I guess, many years outside elections. So I think the yatra has this very important aspect that it reminds everybody that there is more to politics than elections. Politics, as we say, with the big P, and not politics with the small p. So that in itself, to me, is one of the best things that the Yatra, the concept of the Yatra has done. Secondly, I think, given the fact that the normal channels of communication in our society have been effectively choked to a considerable extent, to the extent that this yatras enables the political leadership to actually interact with ordinary people on the ground, listen to them, feel the way they are feeling, I think it's a tremendous thing that's happening. So I would also, I think in this time, the rest of the opposition who are part of the India Alliance have very clearly been included in this yatra. So I think that is going to be an additional factor. We did have in the first yatra also many opposition politicians joining, but they were few in between. Here, I think this is something I look forward to also observing and seeing what impact this will have in terms of putting before the people a real alternative.
So you are saying that the opposition leaders will be the co-travelers right from the beginning of the yatra.
Yeah, it usually doesn't matter whether you're there all the time or not. The issue is the concept. It's very clearly been said that this will include people from, and wherever they go, those different provinces, how it works out, I can't say. That we have to wait and see. But I think the very fact that it's projected as something which is being led by the Congress party and, of course, Rahul Gandhi, but clearly aimed at including others.
All right. Sanjay, with the first leg of the yatra, everyone saw. People saw it centered around Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi was the main protagonist. Of course, it did have an impact. Many people said that it did not have an impact. Now that the entire yatra is revolving not only around Rahul Gandhi, but also around the India Alliance, do you think that there would be reasons for BJP to really get intimidated with this yatra, given also the concept of Nyay, justice, and this yatra also comes at a time when this Ram Mandir inauguration would be very close to the heels on 22nd and 14th, the yatra begins. So how do you see this unfolding in terms of the narrative which is going to build versus India, the India Alliance versus the BJP?
Neelu, first and foremost, great to be on your program again. And I want to start by telling you I have enormous respect for Miss Mukherjee here. But I tend to, let me start by first saying that today I'm going to disagree with her. I'll tell you why. She said I'm a historian and therefore, I'm not going to comment on the future. But let me remind all of you about George Orwell's famous quote in his book of 1984. And he says, "Those who control the present control the past. Those who control the past control the future." Right? So I think end of day, we all know the importance of history. Here is the reality, Neelu, really, that, while you will expect the BJP to really be up and about, on the Ram Temple alone, because that is their real USP for the elections of 2024, I think the fundamental issues of India haven't changed at all. What are they? They are basically income inequality, the poverty. If you look at the real numbers, no matter what the government may claim, there is a serious impoverishment that has happened, in particular post-pandemic. Farmers were on the streets for over a year. There certainly was a reason why India's rural community would be so desperate, right? You look at unemployment, this is not just an opposition sloganeering or opposition, kind of attempt to try and make the government look weak. There is a high level of urban and rural unemployment. Crimes against women. Much as the government may talk about, we passed this bill, the triple talaq bill, and we have talked about women's reservation. You saw how they have humiliated women in this country, and there cannot be a better manifestation of that than the way they treated the champion women wrestlers. Look at Sakshi Malik's story. I think so. If you look at the larger story of India, the youth, income inequality, farmers, women, I mean, you're talking about the bulk of this country. You're talking about the bulk of this country. Uh, and the truth is that I think if you look at India's numbers, GDP, you have grown in the last 4 years by just 3.5%. Now, the government will keep saying, we had the pandemic. Well, you know what? The truth is that affected the entire universe, anyways, right? But the GDP of this country was at 3.9% even pre-pandemic. The government says that we have recovered our growth, but the truth is it has not been a demand-centered growth. So I think the call of the Bharat Jodo Nyay Yatra is hitting, I think, the sweet spot. Because much as we are going to be made to believe, and I'm part of many mainstream television studio debates, that the truth is it's only a chimera. At a fundamental level, and this is what the opposition needs to realize and recognize and do something about it, is that vast sections of India are no longer part of that great India story. I can tell you that in India, the two worst legacies of Mr. Modi since he became Prime Minister, I believe, is the rise of fear and I think the ballooning of hate. And any society, and I think Ms. Mukherjee is a brilliant historian, any society that lives with anger, repressed anxiety, distrust, or mutual recriminations about each other, sooner or later, sooner mostly, you're going to hit not just a roadblock, you're going to have a pile of bricks falling on your head. And I think what Mr. Modi has done and the BJP is doing is keeping the conversation on the us versus them debate. I mean, the history of fascism, and I'm going to use the word fascism here. I don't think it's time for us to be politically correct anymore. We are in an election year. This is not just authoritarian government. You're seeing severe symptoms of fascism destroy the opposition altogether. Put Rahul Gandhi, disqualify him because he questions me and Adani. The media, let's not even get down that story. Thanks to people like you, there are conversations that still happen, Nilu. The truth is, bottom line, there are issues where people need answers. And I think nothing explains that better than examples of people who are under trials in jail, arrested under UPA, finding no justice coming their way. And I want to end before, Sharadji comes in and, the conversation carries on. My biggest worry in this country today, and I need to be vocal with you, is the death of institutions because the common man has nowhere to go. If a politician today can be harassed, arrested, disqualified, I mean, imagine what the common man is asking himself or herself. And I think if people begin to lose faith in the judiciary, which I can tell you in all honesty, many have, and we're not just talking about the lower levels of judiciary here, then I think as a country, as citizens of this country, we need to worry.
All right. So, of course, these are the maladies of the current system, Sharaji. But again, that same question that can this yatra really intimidate BJP, given the fact that on one hand, BJP will be raising the Ram Temple, it will be raising issues like CAA, it will talk about its own Vikas Yatra for the last 9 years or 10 years. And here you will have Rahul Gandhi and the India Alliance partners talking about injustices at multiple levels, social, economic, political. So how will it unfold? Does the Yatra really have the potential of catapulting BJP from its comfortable position, which it is in right now?
Neeluji, in electoral politics, the bottom line is how well are you able to convince the electorate about your agenda? And right now, as you rightly said, there are two streams. One is talking about inequality, injustice, uh, inflation, price rise, joblessness. But on the other side, there is another party or another political uh, side which talking about Ram Janmabhoomi Mandir, Kashi Vishwanath corridor, uh, Mahakal corridor, all kind of temples, and this euphoria. If you see the social media today, from morning to evening, you are being inundated with messages about Ram Temple this, Ram Temple that. This is what is happening. Ayodhya is being converted into a completely religious city and a modern city and a tourist destination, and it's going to turn around fortunes of the entire Eastern UP. So all kind of stories are not only being inundated in social media, but also the mainstream media is feeding such stories. So the narrative which is being created is that these issues which Rahul Gandhi is trying to rake up during his yatra do not matter to the common man. That and what common man right now needs or is being fed is just religious jingoism. So let's see, because the elections, general elections are not very far off. In another month and a half, the country will be in the election mode. And that will be the real test how much impact Rahul Gandhi's yatra is making on the people, how well they are receiving the concept and message, and how well are they or are they believing what BJP is feeding them. So I feel let's wait for the yatra to unroll and then let's speak to people and then find out what is their reaction to both sides.
Yatra, of course, will be political. It will have social overtones as well. So, ma'am, again, the same question that, how will the India alliance, I mean, what are the prospects for the India alliance? Because ultimately they have to come back in power. That is what they are vying for. They have to establish a narrative which is opposite to what the BJP says. And until and unless they are able to build a credible narrative, it will be difficult for people to digest, this kind of which many people say that, this is very academic, because when people are confronted with a religious jingoism, then all these issues about injustice, price rise, inflation, they take a back seat. So there are doubts that, whether India alliance will be able to offer and make the yatra so convincing that people will start traveling along with the Rahul Gandhi and along with the India alliance partners if they are walking along. And will we say that, the wind is changing? Does this yatra really hold that as well?
As I said earlier, it's difficult to predict these things. There are examples of all kinds. I don't think you asked the question, can these issues stand against jingoism? Of course, it's a very difficult situation, and it's not something that been happening in the last few months. There's been now a consistent attempt for the last 9.5, 10 years, using the full weight of the state to inculcate this ideology among the people. And it's done through a variety of means. It's done through education. It's done largely through the media, popular media. It's done through social media. And it is also done through instigation of communal violence, which we know is also a rapid way of doing propaganda. The fastest way of doing propaganda is to actually provoke violence on the ground, because then that leads to polarization and people taking sides. So we had for example, a few months ago. But the other side of the story, look at what happened a few days ago. The truckers, the truck drivers strike. I mean, out of, things can suddenly happen out of nowhere. Did anybody expect that they virtually brought the country to a standstill? I was not in Delhi, I was in Hyderabad, and the city shut down. The traffic was blocked. You couldn't go from here to there, petrol pumps. Right? There was panic. Everybody in Bombay, in Pune, in Nagpur, Delhi for some reason, maybe whatever it was, in Punjab, in Himachal, so many states, Now, of course, government went into panic control, into panic mode and damage control, because they realized that if they allowed this to happen, all their gains through jingoism could have come to naught. Because fuel stopping means it's not just that you can't go from one place, it means your subsidy doesn't come, your supplies don't come. In 2 or 3 days, the whole economy will shut down. cooking gas. Already in hotels, it was being reported that they didn't have cooking gas. So because the fuel, what these people had also very smartly done was they'd shut down, they're protesting outside the fuel depots. So nothing could go out of there. So look at the way the farmers' agitation happened. Would anybody have imagined, including the farmers, I think themselves, that they could last out for a year or more? It was unbelievable, but it happened before our eyes. Just before COVID, we had the whole anti-CA, NRC agitation. Again, a groundswell. So it is, we cannot sort of say that nothing will work. I mean, there is such a pall of, gloom and such terrible control. It depends. One can also not say, yes, definitely these things will happen. But as in the beginning, Sanjay, listed out the real life issues with which people are confronted. A vast majority of this country is suffering from terrible poverty and unemployment. They are on the brink of disaster. Let's not forget that. Youth without jobs in large numbers and visibly so. That something cannot ignite something in people's minds. That would also be a wrong thing. Now, the whole thing, of course, depends on how things happen, how things unravel. And of course, what we saw last time was the Pulwama, which like till February, I remember. In fact, I remember clearly when Pulwama happened, because till then the narrative was completely different about what was going to happen. And then Pulwama happened and the narrative changed like that. Now, one doesn't know what more aces they have up their sleeve. You can't repeat a Pulwama, presumably not, but you can do many other things. So that all is the uncertainties there. But I think it is the job of political actors and us citizens to keep on trying and do our best. Nobody can predict finally what will happen. But I think it's extremely important. And I also want to mention something I would have very much liked to mention in the beginning, which Sanjay again pointed out, about the fear, And I think that was one of the most positive effects of the Yatra, the Bharat Jodo Yatra 1, was that in a situation where people were so afraid to speak their minds, you had thousands and then slowly lakhs of people coming out into the streets, supporting an obviously anti-government political act, without fear. Because you showed that it could be done and still survive. So I think those are, and also the message of, again, what he said about the polarization,
Yes.
The deep kind of anxieties in society, how it's such an unhealthy thing. I think, again, the attempt to counter that frontally with the message of Nafrat ke bazaar mein mohabbat ki dukaan. So similarly, I think, yes, I think from what I'm seeing, the Rahul Gandhi's team, the Congress party, and I think one thing's very important, and there's a distinction, I don't know if people are mentioning it. Last time, the Congress had not officially said this was their yatra.
Yes.
They had not started against it, but that was very different. Here, it was a request at the CWC, which means there's a complete backing. I think that's significant, whatever its impact is. But I think it's very significant for the party this way also to own up the first phase. This is their way of owning it up. Right. And also be fully behind it.
Yeah.
And the fact that now the statements and all are not just made by people who are associated with like the first yatra, like Jairam Ramesh and Digvijay Singh and all, but the party president is coming out and speaking. I think that's also, I think, of great significance.
Right. Right. So Sanjay, Mridulaji was talking about the distinctions. And if you have to make a comparison between what we saw during the first leg of the yatra and what the biggest takeaways of the second yatra would be, though the yatra hasn't begun, it's a little premature to discuss this. But what would you think that would be the biggest markers of the second leg of the yatra, and which would be really very prominent differentiators as far as the yatra is concerned?
Primarily to add to what I think Mridulaji already said, I think the first yatra was largely ideological. It talked about a country fissured and fractured at the social level, largely on account of the religious tensions that were being manufactured, really. And I think the second Bharat Jodo Nyay Yatra needs to become political. So you had an ideological yatra. This is and ought to be a political yatra. And I think it's important to send out that message with a lot of clarity, because, the people of this country are wise and smart, and they will be able to then recognize that, listen, this is an ideological battle, but it's a battle to create for India a different political ecosystem, one that serves everybody and is not for a particular community or a set of industrialists or those who are, the blue-eyed boys of the powers that be. And I think that messaging is crucial, which is why I think the Jodo and the Nyay have both come together here. Because the unity issue in this country is not going to change as long as the BJP remains in power, because their entire, and let's not try and pretend otherwise, their entire political survival depends upon a country that can be run or managed by keeping people in different blocks. And I think the unity challenge for India will remain until you get one day a Gandhi as a leader who lets everybody just become one voluntarily without any electoral kind of windfalls or without giving you some kind of a sop. I think the larger point, therefore, remains what I think Mridulaji has mentioned. I think Sharadji mentioned as well. Is the opposition going to become a great storyteller? Now, I have been part of, I have followed political history for a long time. And I just feel that, human beings are emotional creatures. That's why they react to a Hindutva and the Ram temple, because it's emotive, right? It affects me. So if I'm a Hindu and if I'm a devout Hindu, the Ram temple comes up, evokes all kinds of, various kind of chemicals running in my system. Now, here is the trick, that when you're talking of unemployment, don't just throw data. Record unemployment in 45 years, 8.3%. To the common man, that doesn't yet ring a bell. You need to convey that message by saying, you know what? Is this government killing the dreams of India's young? That appeals much more than merely saying that there's a record unemployment. If you talk of, for example, sectarian divides, you just don't talk about the fact that the BJP is communal and it is doing religious polarization. Talk about the fact that it's destroying our neighborhoods, that is not allowing us to celebrate our festivals together, that I can't go with a box of mithai to my neighbor because I don't trust my neighbor anymore. I think that, the opposition needs storytellers. I've always believed that, in politics, you may have the most fundamental issues to beat the opposition, but you got to make the public feel, and that's what Sharadji rightly mentioned, that end of day, the winner in any contest, especially political, is the one who makes me feel my pain. Someone who gives me the confidence that this guy has an empathy for my sufferings and is not there merely to win an election. And I do believe that if you look at, Neelu, what happened in Parliament the other day, the BJP might try and, wash it off by saying, these were disgruntled, aggressive elements and arrest them under various charges. But they've said they did not have jobs. I mean, can you imagine the level of desperation in society? And I just kind of did a role play, Neelu, that particular day. And I said, how crazily insane would I have to be to carry some smoke canisters in my body? And I know that I'll be caught, by the way. I'm just trying to be, an oxygen of publicity for my distress. And I know I'm going to be caught. I know the government is so vindictive, it might throw me in jail for the rest of my life if they remain in power. And I'm willing to take the risk just to tell people that, listen, we are suffering here. And that is coming from India's young. These are people who have a life ahead of them,
right,
who are willing to give it all up to tell you that they are in an honestly terrible shape. And I think that is the argument that the India Alliance needs to understand. And the second last point, before we move to Sharaji, I do believe that fundamentally this country remains secular. The BJP will try and convert people into hardline. BJP will progressively try and convert people into a hardline or, more what I call is religious centric. But I think a vast section of India remains a swing vote. We are not like America, red states, blue states, and a few states with a swing vote. The swing vote is enormous. And if the Indian opposition understands that, don't treat every voter for the BJP as a Hindutva. My understanding of Hindus, and I'm a very traditional, Brahmin from Bihar, although I've never lived there for any part of my life. I've seen many relations of mine. They are religious, they're not communal. They go to temples, they will never have any angry word to say about any minority community, not at all. So I just feel that the opposition does not have to fall into this trap that there's a Hindu and an anti-Hindu, etc., etc. Let the BJP play its politics. You play yours better, smarter, and show the hunger and the ambition that you can win this.
Right, absolutely. And you were talking about how credible the storytelling could be. And if I remember these recent assembly elections, Sharaji, there were a lot of creatives which were done by Congress on unemployment, on the communal violence, and there were a number of them which we saw on the Congress's timeline, Twitter timeline. If you had gone at that time, they had come out with number of very creative the memes, and but the point is that it still didn't ring the bell of the people, and look at what happened in Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh. So the point is that can this yatra towards the end, if I have to ask you, will it be able to awaken that section of the country which apparently has been blindly saying that Modi hai to mumkin hai, which has been that section of the people which has been blindly following the religious jingoism, that section of the society which falls for the nationalism narrative? So that section of the society, will this yatra awaken them?
Neeraj, we have to track we have to see the track record of this government and especially the leadership we have right now. This is the leadership which fought the Gujarat Assembly elections time and again on issues like should Sohrabuddin be killed or not, and issues like Sonia Maino Gandhi or James Michael Lingdo or Mia Musharraf. So those kind of issues have been the baseline for this leadership. So we don't expect anything else in this election also other than the religious jingoism, as I said. And second thing is they again try to portray the opposition as feeding the minoritism, feeding the minoritism. And time and again, now what has happened is that no party is now ready to give representation, rather tickets, to minority communities, especially the Muslims. In fact, I was talking to a Muslim leader from the BJP, and he said, I'm not likely to get a ticket till this leadership remains in power in BJP. So I said, why don't you move to some other party? He says, no party is ready to give tickets to the Muslims now. So that is basically symbol of changing the social milieu. Not only political parties, actually whole society has changed. And I don't blame this the people right now, because what is happening is the Congress government, rather the UPA government, when it was in power, it time and again kept on saying things like that the first right on national resources belongs to the Muslims. So if that is kind of the narrative which is being propagated time and again, maybe out of context by the BJP, and it is establishing a narrative that the entire opposition panders to only Muslims, and the majority Hindus, they are being neglected by the opposition. So that is the narrative being created by the BJP. And I think uh, Rahul's first yatra managed to break the propaganda being unleashed against him that he is political novice, he doesn't understand politics, he's an inconsistent politician, and all kind of innuendos like the Papu and all that. So all those memes have stopped. He is now being taken seriously. So I think maybe in the next yatra when he starts and he speaks, so I think people and the media is going to take him seriously, and it will be his word against Modi's word, which will matter to the people. And as Sanjay ji rightly said, ultimately the party which manages to convince people about their agenda will win the election. And that will be the basic test of people's credibility, whether it is Modi's credibility or for Rahul Gandhi's credibility and his Nyay Yatra's credibility.
Absolutely. So, well, lots to look forward to once the yatra begins, and there'll be optics, there'll be narrative, there'll be a lot of politics. So, we'll see how the yatra unfolds. Thank you so much, Mridula Mukherjee, Sanjay Jha, Sharadji. Thank you so much for joining. And one appeal to the viewers who are watching this discussion: subscribe to our channel and send us your feedback, and stay tuned to the Federal. Thank you.
Tamil Nadu Global Investors Meet 2024 is happening in Chennai on January 7 and 8. Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.